discover more about the nature of reality and help create a better life for yourself and the rest of the planet. My name is Icke and I've created a process called Draw Your Reality. For more information, you can go to my website, nikkipalmer.com, and receive a free gift that I put together just for you.
Hello and welcome to the Icke Videocast, and this week the subject is 5G, and I don't call it a war on humanity just for the sake of it, but because it is on so many levels, which I'm going to get into. Not just health, though that's massive, but also manipulating the very things that you think, the very emotions that you have, and thus the responses and behavior that come from that. 5G is being sold as a wonderful upgrade so that you'll be able to upload a movie in seconds. You know, isn't it great? Well, I hope it's a good movie, given the consequences that are going to be paid for it. 5G is not just an upgrade on 5G, a more powerful version. We've had 1G and 2G and 3G and 4G, G being generation. And when you see the consequences for so many people of the Wi-Fi and the cell phones, in terms of the impact of this electromagnetic bombardment, and it's cumulative. So lots of people who think, well, it's not affected me, well, hang about a bit. So this power of telecommunication technology, of the frequency, has got more and more powerful, okay. But 5G replacing 4G is not just another step up. It's a completely different frequency. 5G operates in the realm of millimeter waves as opposed to microwaves. Now, microwaves are bad enough. I mean, would you put a microwave oven to your ear? But 5G is taking it on to a totally different level. And it's being rolled out by the telecommunication giants, corporations, without any testing. And even the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, has admitted that they're not bothering with regulation and stuff because they just want to get it out there. Well, they do, and there's a massive reason why they do, which I'll come to. So let me start with health. Why is this technology, of which 5G is a massive advance in terms of its effect on health, why is it affecting health? Because the human body is an expression of an electromagnetic information field or fields. And if you have something that disturbs the balance of that field, you disturb the information. Thus, you disturb what that information expresses itself as, which is the human body and human health, human dis-ease, disharmony. So you're driving along in your car and you go under a big electrical series of cables going across the road, as you do so often. What happens when you go through and your radio's on? It gets disturbed by the impact of the electromagnetic field that's coming down from those cables. That is exactly what Wi-Fi and what's coming off phones and these other gadgets is doing to the human body. And it's cumulative. If you are subjected to it, then the imbalance that comes from one dose never really rights itself before you get another dose, which disturbs and distorts the field even more. And this is how cumulatively this works. Doesn't mean that when 5G is turned on, people are going to drop dead all over the place. But cumulatively, it's going to be lethal. And that's why they're doing no testing, because if they did, and then openly, honestly, made public the results, it would never be allowed to happen. And forget about safety guidelines, they're irrelevant. You know when people say, oh yeah, but it's within safety guidelines. This is what happens. They go to the corporations and they say, what level of 5G power, for instance, so I'm not even bothering with that this time, but what level of power do you need to make this technology you're selling work? Or they'll go and say, how much of this crap do you need to put in food or water to do what you want to do? And then what they do is they make the safety guidelines just above that. So when the effects start to be seen in human health and other ways, they say, oh no, it can't be dangerous, it's within the safety guidelines. This is what they're doing all the time. Safety guidelines mean nothing. Evidence of consequences for people is what real evidence is. So we're looking at 5G claiming to be able to make devices work 10 to 100 times faster than they do now. I mean, how quick do you want them? Oh, my life's terrible. I've had to wait 5 minutes to download this movie. If we'll get 5G that will be frying me, I could do it in seconds. This is a story about scientists and doctors warning of the potential health risk of 5G. More than 230 scientists from 40 countries have expressed their concerns, their serious concerns, regarding the ubiquitous and increasing exposure to EMF generated by electric and wireless devices already before, they say, additional mayhem is caused by 5G. They refer to the fact that numerous recent scientific publications have shown that EMF effects in living organisms at all levels, those effects happen at well below most international and national guidelines. See above. Effects include increased cancer risk, cellular stress, increase in harmful free radicals, genetic damage, structural and functional changes of the reproductive system, learning and memory deficits, neurological disorders, and negative impacts on general well-being in human beings. Damage goes well beyond the human race, it says, as there is growing evidence of harmful effects to both plants and animals. But of course, anything that affects and disrupts an electromagnetic field of information, which is what plants are an expression of, which is what animals are an expression of, just like humans, is going to affect everything. And so the scientists say, we the undersigned, scientists and doctors, recommend a moratorium on the rollout of the 5th generation, or 5G, for telecommunication until potential hazards for human health and the environment have been fully investigated by scientists independent from industry. Well, that's why it's not done, because people would be shocked to the core about what they would find. 5G will substantially increase exposure to radio frequency electromagnetic fields, RF, EMF, on top of the 2G, 3G, 4G, Wi-Fi, etc., for telecommunications already in place. RF EMF has been proven, it says, to be harmful for humans and the environment. So, this is another report featuring a man called Dr. Joel Moskowitz. The 5G technology is too new, he says, to have been thoroughly tested and studied by many parties outside of cell service providers. And according to Moskowitz, a public health professor at the University of California, Berkeley, millimeter waves could pose a very real danger. You ain't kidding. The deployment of 5G, or fifth generation cellular technology, constitutes a massive experiment on the health of all species, he says. But what if those deep in the shadows who are ultimately behind this know exactly what the consequences will be, and that's why they're doing it? It says because millimeter waves are weaker than microwaves, they are predominantly absorbed by the skin, meaning their distribution is quite focused there. And there are consequences that most people won't have thought about of that, which I'll come to. Since skin contains capillaries and nerve endings, millimeter wave bioeffects may be transmitted through molecular mechanisms by the skin or through the nervous system, he says. He's concerned that 5G will use high band frequencies or millimeter waves that may affect the eyes, the testes, the skin, the peripheral nervous system, and sweat glands. Sweat glands, very significant in all this, again, as I'll come to. Millimeter waves can also make some pathogens resistant to antibiotics. So, in terms of 5G, what is there not to like? Think how quick your movies all download. Be great. Dr. Ben Icke of the Hebrew University in Israel says that sweat ducts act like an array of helical antennas when exposed to these wavelengths, meaning that we become more conductive. That will be very significant before I finish this videocast. A study that experimented with 60 gigahertz waves stated that the analysts of penetration depth show that more than 90% of the transmitted power is absorbed in levels of the skin. So you basically the body becomes an antenna, which it is, the way it operates. But this is going to use that antenna potential to devastate humanity cumulatively, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And there's something called active denial systems, which use this antenna, this skin potential, which again I'm going to come to in a second, which police and the military use to disperse crowds of protesters and make them scatter. Now, in Britain, in a place in the north of England called Gateshead, a scientist there called Mark Steele has been very publicly and actively warning people about the effects of LED streetlights, which he says in Gateshead are emitting now 5G. And he's pointing out the consequences that are being seen and experienced of that. The council claim it's not happening, but, you know, let's just believe them and go back to sleep, shall we? Anyway, Mark Steele is a local resident in Gateshead and reportedly a member of an organisation which describes itself as the world's largest technical professional organisation dedicated to advancing technology for the benefit of the community and humanity in general. He is doing his best to raise awareness, the story says, about the threat posed by the new LED street lamps which were installed back in 2016. Steele says that a number of people have been suffering with nosebleeds, that's another effect of 5G for many people, insomnia, and other neurological problems since the lights were put in place. But the horror doesn't end there, the story says. Multiple women have lost their babies since that time. In his own circle of friends, Steele explains 3 women have lost babies, one of which was born with severe defects and survived just a few hours after birth. We are seeing babies dying in the womb as these transmitters are situated outside people's bedroom windows. It's a humanitarian crisis, Steele reportedly commented. EMF radiation, the story goes on, is the same kind of radiation produced by cell phones, though it can be emitted by other devices, including LED streetlights, according to Professor Ulrich Warnke of the University of Saarland. Warnke believes that EMF radiation causes disruption to the body's nitrogen monoxide system, which keeps cells healthy and controls gene expression. But it's not the only one. Multiple health agencies have sounded the alarm on the potential dangers of this kind of radiation, but few are listening. And few are listening because it's an agenda, because it's been planned for a very long time, and it's much bigger than health, as we'll see. But this is the response you get. Is this guy Steele? Whatever the validity of what he's saying, and he needs to be listened to, and it needs to be checked out, he is warning people about potential major hazards to their health. And here are 3 comments on the internet from what he said and about what he said. This one comes from Jamie R. Stewart, who tweeted, "Never heard anything so stupid in my life, might ring in sick at work and blame it on the streetlights." Stella Armstrong: "I don't believe any of that rubbish, but the lamps are barely worth bothering with. They shed so little light, they're a waste of time." Well, Stella, maybe you might ask why, suddenly, and for no good reason, lamps that work very, very well and gave out a certain frequency of light, and a lot of it, have been replaced with lights that operate on a different frequency and are crap at giving out light. Ever thought about that? Oh no. And then finally Tom Warner. Sounds an intelligent bloke. "Actually, my street now has these new lights, and they have given my pet lizard powers. He can read my thought and control my dreams. Yesterday he ordered me to buy him posher salad and loads of bugs. Help me." Well, you do need it, mate. Lambs to the bloody slaughter. Fortunately, more intelligent people, more aware people, are seeing through the bullshit. And what did Gateshead Council do when this guy, Mark Steele, came out and said this? Did they investigate? Did they question? Did they produce the evidence that it's not happening? No, they took the bloke to court to try to gag him. These are your representatives, ladies and gentlemen. And they used your money to do it in Gateshead. Judge refuses to gag anti-5G campaigner stating the public have a right to know. At least there's one judge who cares about freedom, at least to some extent. A judge has refused to gag an anti-5G lighting campaigner, ruling the issue should be debated. Well, of course it bloody should. Mark Steele claims 5G kills babies and causes cancer and believes it's secretly being used in Gateshead. The council denies this and applied for an injunction to limit what the 57-year-old could even post online about 5G. Now, this is not a rarity. The amount of stuff that you hear about 5G and its dangers compared with the scale of the dangers is minimal. And anyone that questions authority about it, the authority does what they can to shut them up. Here we go. An interim order imposed in July restricted what Steele could post on Facebook, but recorder Nolan QC said he refused to gag him, adding the public have a right to know. Imposing the new order, recorder Nolan warned him, I'm not going to give you a gagging order. It is an area which I can accept. There is an area of public concern and the public have a right to know. This is a free country. Well, it's claimed to be. So this 5G, with its lethal consequences, I was always going to say lethal potential consequences, but for many people, they're not potential. They won't be. Has been rolled out. It's being rolled out now more and more through 2019, massively more in 2020, by the industry with no checks and balances from the government to the agencies of government that should be protecting the public from the consequences and the telecommunication corporations. This is a quote, or a series of quotes, just linked together, by a guy called Tom Wheeler. Tom Wheeler's a lovely man. He is, or was, chair in 2016 of the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, which is the American government agency that oversees telecommunications and supposed to, like I say, protect the public from its excesses. He made a speech in 2016, you can see it on the internet, in which he openly said, we're not bothering with regulation. We're going to roll this out. We need to get this out. There's money in it. Actually, it's more than money, as we'll come to. This is a few of his statements in that speech. 5G will use much higher frequency bands, antennas that can aim and amplify signals, massive deployments of small cells all over the place, pumping this stuff out. Tens of billions of dollars in economic activity, hundreds of billions of microchips. If something can be connected, it will be connected. And here's the quote. Unlike other countries, we won't wait for the standards. In other words, get it out there before people realize what the effect is. And Tom Wheeler delivered a campaign contribution to Barack Obama of $700,000 and was nominated by the Obama administration to be chairman of the FCC a month later. Now, I mentioned active denial systems, or ADS. Now, these operate on the same millimeter band as 5G. Now, imagine they're going to put 5G everywhere. They're going to pound it at the Earth from space. And it's the same frequency band used by these active denial systems. Well, let me describe what these are. The ADS works by firing a high-powered beam within this millimeter wave band at the target. The ADS millimeter wave energy works on a similar principle as a microwave oven. That'd be great having them everywhere, wouldn't it? Exciting the water and fat molecules in the skin and instantly heating them via dielectric heating. The ADS's effect of repelling humans by heating their skin is how this technology works. The radiation burns caused are similar to microwave burns on the skin surface due to the decreased penetration of shorter millimeter waves. The surface temperature of a target will continue to rise so long as the beam is applied at a rate dictated by the target's material and distance from the transmitter. Now, these 5G transmitters are meant to be little boxes all the way down the street, like every street, and pounded out at the Earth from space. So, it's dictated by the target's, the effect dictated by the target's material and distance from the transmitter, along with the beam's frequency and power level set by the operator. Now, this 5G can open with a certain power level, which will be bad enough, but then they can switch it up and fry everybody. So most human test subjects reach their pain threshold within 3 seconds, and none could endure more than 5 seconds. A spokesman for the Air Force Research Laboratory described his experience as a test subject for the system. He said, "For the first millisecond, it just felt like the skin was warming up. Then it got warmer and warmer, and you felt like it was on fire." So this is how they scatter crowds of protesters and force people to flee at speed with this technology, the police and the military. They fire these millimeter waves at the crowd, and the crowd very quickly get the feeling their skin is on fire. And what do? They run. Why wouldn't they? And this report goes on. Like all focused energy, the beam will irradiate all matter in the target area, including everything behind that is not shielded, with no possible discrimination between individuals, objects, or materials. Anyone incapable of leaving the target area, physically handicapped, infants, incapacitated, trapped, would continue to receive radiation until the operator turned off the beam. Now, of course, to make your skin feel like it's on fire, they increase the power. But this is the same millimeter wave frequency that they are planning to put everywhere and create a sea of it from which we cannot escape. And so look at the effect on people once you realize what the body is and how it works of this devastating crap. I mentioned about the fact the body is an expression of an electromagnetic information field. Yeah. But the brain works electrically. The genetic system communicates electrically. DNA transmits and receives in terms of frequency. And it will be receiving and transmitting this crap when the frequency of this is in tune with the frequency of what DNA operates on. So now we can start to understand why one of the major devastating risks of 5G is that it will devastate DNA. And if you are disrupting the electrical signals of the brain, which is what we call thought, then you are massively dictating people's ability even to think straight. You can make them docile by the frequencies you pound out through this means. And like I say, it's planned to be everywhere. 5G doesn't travel well. It doesn't pass through what we perceive as solid objects very well, through buildings, through trees, for instance. People who are complaining in areas that trees in urban areas are being cut down at a ridiculous rate. I mean, in Sheffield, in England, there's been a massive campaign against what they've been doing, cutting trees down. Well, I would just throw this in. Urban streets with lines of mature trees are the worst nightmare of 5G. And because it doesn't travel well, instead of having big transmitters transmitting the frequency over a long area, big area, they need little boxes on the street lamps and other positions down the street. Hundreds and hundreds, thousands and thousands of them in major cities. Outside your children's bedroom, everywhere, pounding out this stuff. And it's all long, coldly planned. So, it's not just the health effects. There's a even bigger picture. And that is the so-called smart grid, which is a plan unfolding before our eyes to create a network where all technology, everything from your fridge to your car, everything is connected to the internet via these Wi-Fi frequencies, etc. Wi-Fi fields. And the idea is that whoever controls the internet controls all those devices. Of course, they've got massive surveillance potential as well, which is all part of it. And they've called this the Internet of Things. I was warning about this way back in my books, long before it was rolled out, the Internet of Things. But they want to go one step further, which is to create something called the Internet of Everything. And that is when they attach the human brain, the human body brain, to the internet via artificial intelligence. And to do that, to create this Internet of Things and to create this Internet of Everything, they need telecommunication power of 5G. And that's why it's being played out without any testing, won't take no for an answer. Anyone wants to speak out has to be silenced. It's because they know what the effect is going to be. They just don't want us to know until it's out there and the effect is irreversible. Now, every thought, every emotion is a frequency, gives off a frequency, is a frequency. If you can fire at people that frequency, which is absolutely possible through this 5G technology and 5G level of power, you can make those thoughts that those frequencies represent and those emotions manifest in people. If you want to start a riot, for instance, then you fire the frequency that would make people respond in fury and anger and rage, and you'll get your bloody riot. All you need is a little spark and off you go. This is not what's coming. This is already being done. But 5G allows this to be taken onto a totally new level of effectiveness. And the idea too, because of course, as what I've been warning about all these decades becomes bloody obvious in terms of what's happening, they know that there's going to be a reaction against it. And what this 5G web grid is about on that level is firing out frequencies that will make people docile and not respond, make them like zombies. This is where we come back to the conductivity of the body. It's an antenna. It works as an antenna when it's left to its own devices. And these people are using those antenna properties to make us decode and interact with these frequencies meant to dictate our mental, emotional, and well as physical state. Now, if they're going to do that, and they're going to do it globally, and that's the idea, then there can't be any escape from it. If there's any escape from it, then you've not got everybody in your electromagnetic web. So as well as these little antennae all the way down the streets pumping this stuff out, they're doing it from space. I have been warning about this for so long. And here's a story. Details about the 20,000 satellites earmarked for beaming 5G radiation at us from space and why this is a bad idea. Well, unless you are people on Twitter responding to what is being said about Gateshead, unless you're on that level of idiocy, it's quite bloody obvious why 20,000 satellites pounding 5G frequencies at the Earth is a bad idea. 20,000 satellites for 5G to be launched, sending focused beams of intense radiation over the entire Earth. In my last book, Everything You Need to Know But Have Never Been Told, I go into this in detail and say this is what is being done. I also name the companies involved, as this article does now. Regardless, the plans for 5G being installed all over the planet as well as in space are still underway, regardless, that is, of those that are saying this is dangerous. Proponents say it's what is best for us despite widespread opposition and known harm from exposure. The Federal Communications Commission, here we go, the FCC, owned by the industry. That guy Wheeler, who made those statements about we're going to have 5G and no regulation. He was chairman of an organization before he became head of the FCC, head of an organization that represented the telecommunications industry. He was a lobbyist for him. That Obama, who then appoints him as head of the FCC that's supposed to regulate the telecommunications industry for which he was a lobbyist, he cares about people. Good old Barack. The FCC gave approval to SpaceX, Elon Musk, on March 29, 2018 to launch 4,425 satellites into low orbit around the Earth. The total number of satellites that is expected to be put into low and high orbits by several companies will be 20,000 satellites. Now, you might remember Elon Musk. He's the guy that's been going on about, oh, artificial intelligence could be the end of humanity. And then, through his SpaceX company, he wants to put thousands of satellites up, he's planning to, doing so, to beam the very frequency and electromagnetic field at the Earth, which will allow artificial intelligence to take over the world, humanity. And he also opened a company called Neuralink to connect AI to the human brain. This is the man who says, oh, it's ever so dangerous. Other companies, OneWeb, 4,560 satellites, Boeing, 2,956 satellites, Spire Global, 972 satellites. So this stuff is designed to create a sub-reality, electromagnetic, technologically generated sub-reality all around the Earth in the areas that humans operate, that is planned to interact with the human brain and the human body and dictate our thoughts and dictate our emotions. That's what it's about. And to make that happen, to make that work, they have to have the power of 5G. The first two 5G test satellites were launched by SpaceX in February 2018. Hundreds of other satellites are expected to be launched in 2019. The full set of 20,000 satellites could be put in orbit during the next 2 years. To put this into perspective, as of September 2017, there were 1,738 operating satellites in orbit around the Earth. This means that the number of satellites, possibly within 2 years, will be 11 times greater than what we have now. Coincidentally, synchronistically, an email popped into my box yesterday when I was putting this videocast together. Now, I can't obviously say for sure that what he said here is true, because there's no way of me knowing. But what it said, all I can comment on is that what it says is exactly what is planned. And the email details the comments of a son of a guy who bought an interest in 5G in, let's say, the Americas. And his son said that his father told him that the government believed the health issues were a small price to pay for, quote, more stability among the people. He said government admitted to him that 5G will cause health issues among some percentage of the population, but 5G will allow them to program peaceful thoughts and beliefs into the population to reduce violence, crime, and political instability. He was told it was going to happen with or without him. The governments of the world want more control over the people, and this allows them to program people to obey without protest. Something I've been warning about for so long, because that's what this is really about. It won't matter if you use 5G services or not. Almost the entire population will be within the matrix of the cell towers and transmitters. They hope to quietly install the equipment by advertising how much faster 5G will be before most of the public discover what their real agenda is, which is a police state control over the entire world, including the programming of our minds to be docile. See my books since the 1990s. This is real. I don't, care if people say, oh, it's no rubbish, they'd never do that. They are doing it. And one of the great barriers, defense mechanisms that this cabal behind this, ultimately in the shadows, has, is the perception that no one would be that evil. Oh, no one would do that. They'd never do that. I can tell you, after 30 years of research into these people, not only can they be that evil, this is almost mild compared with what they're capable of. And it's about time humanity grew up, as well as growing a pair, but grew up and realized the situation we face. We can't leave it to politicians. We've got to start dictating to politicians by not cooperating with them and not cooperating with the system that wishes to enslave us. You know, I've met many politicians over the years in different parties. They are some of the dumbest, most clueless, uninformed people, with honourable exceptions, you'll ever come across. There is a group within the dumb that is coldly calculating and advancing this agenda in full knowledge of what they're doing on behalf of people in the shadows where the real power is. But most politicians are just bloody clueless. Here's an example. Either he's clueless or he's bloody lying. There's a story about a lady called Claire Edwards. She was a United Nations staff member, and she was warning of the potentially catastrophic dangers of 5G technology. When she was at the UN office in Vienna, they installed powerful Wi-Fi and cell phone access points designed to serve large public areas, and they put them in narrow, metal-walled corridors throughout the Vienna International Centre in December 2015. And this lady, Claire Edwards, then became continuously ill for 7 months. She says, I did my best for 2.5 years to alert the UN staff union, useless, like most unions, that have been absorbed by the system now. Administration and medical services to the dangers to the health of UN staff from these access points, but was ignored. That's why in May 2018, and you can see the video on the internet, I took issue took the issue to the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, or Guterres. He is a physicist and electrical engineer and lectured on telecommunication signals early in his career, yet asserted to me that he knew nothing about the dangers of 5G and these access points, and even said, you hear it on the video, oh, I didn't know that, I put them in my house. Well, either he's an idiot and wasn't concentrating when he was supposedly an electrical engineer and physicist, or he's lying. Take your pick. He said that he would undertake to ask the World Health Organization to look into it, but 7 months later, those public access points remain in place. I have received no replies to my many follow-up emails. Why? Because this is an agenda. You know, and when some of us have talked over the years about a plan to massively cull the human population, not least because so many fewer people are now perceived necessary as AI comes in and absolutely absorbs phenomenal amounts of jobs. That tidal wave of job loss and job replacement, we're seeing it, but we're on the cusp of the tidal wave. So when some of us have talked about this plan for a cull of the human population, it's been like, well, what do you mean? Everyone's going to die? No, it's not the way it's going to be done. It's going to be done cumulatively. It is being done cumulatively. It's being done cumulatively by the crap in the food, by the crap in the water, all that stuff. But most of all, it is planned to be done by 5G and other such frequencies that disturb, distort, and dismantle the human organism, which in its base form is an electromagnetic field of information. So we can go on ignoring this and being caught into all these other diversions that take our attention. Oh, 5G, 5G. Oh, look over here. Look over here. Hey, who do you think is going to win the match tonight? Oh, who's going to win the celebrity this or that and the other? Don't look here. Well, we better start looking here. Not pretty damn quick, but now. Because this has the capacity to be absolutely devastating for humanity, mentally, emotionally, and physically. We wake up, or we accept the catastrophe that's coming. If we don't,